I'm divorcing a defective product that can't bear children. I'm taking the house and the car too. Scotty is right. You're no longer part of our family. Go back to your parents' house or whatever, do as you like. While grinning vulgarly, Scott and his mother Hillary hurled these words at me. Their twisted smiles were identical, and I realized, these two really are parent and child. Until now, they treated me like a servant. They had been messing with me for their own convenience for years, but I never imagined they would find someone else for Scott to remarry and suddenly demand a divorce from me. I can't believe how selfish they were. Honestly, I'm disgusted with my poor judgment. If I had known they were like this, I would never have married. I made a wrong choice in a crucial decision of my life, but from now on, I will not make a mistake. With that resolution in my heart, I faced Scott and Hillary squarely and slowly began to speak. My name is Kate Brown, a 37-year-old working housewife. I work at a regular company and also have a side job. I met my husband Scott 12 years ago. At that time, I was working at another company, and Scott, who came to do sales, caught my attention. He was very attractive back then, and I quickly fell for him and we started dating. Things progressed smoothly and led to marriage. However, my parents were against the marriage. Scott's company was a real sweatshop, and my father, who worked in the same industry, had heard some bad rumors. He said the company would go under, and marrying would only bring hardship. Despite my parents' opposition, I stubbornly married Scott. But my father's prediction came true. Soon after our marriage, Scott's company went bankrupt. Scott wanted me to quit my job, but I went back to work immediately to support Scott, who was now unemployed. Sorry, Kate. I'll find a job soon. Okay, I understand. I'll do my best until then. As promised, Scott found a job, but it was also a terrible place, and he quit soon after. After that, Scott switched jobs frequently. Somehow, we managed to build a house, thinking we had finally found our forever home. But that was short-lived. My in-laws moved into our house and started living with us by force. Life became truly dreadful after that. My father-in-law was almost non-existent, so there was no trouble from him. But my mother-in-law Hillary constantly made snide remarks. Kate, there's still dust here. You know I have allergies, are you doing this on purpose? Sorry, Mother. I'll clean it up right away. Initially, the in-laws were quiet. But gradually, they started to show their true colors and treated me like a slave. After Scott's company went bankrupt, I continued working as our financial situation was unstable. However, my in-laws didn't understand that I was supporting the household and thought of my job as just a part-time housewife's work. Scotty is working hard outside, and you're just messing around with household chores. I kept hearing complaints from my mother-in-law, and my sighs only increased. Influenced by her, Scott also started to take me for granted. You've been slacking off lately, haven't you? I'm not saying don't go to work, but if you're going to do both, you need to manage both work and household properly. I'm sorry. Before I knew it, the kind Scott had completely disappeared, and he also started exploiting me. As for my father-in-law, he fell ill soon after moving in due to his unhealthy lifestyle, and needed care. Of course, the caregiving was also my job. My mother-in-law pushed the caregiving onto me and just went about enjoying herself. I managed somehow with the help of caregivers and nursing services. However, one day, while I was momentarily out shopping, my father-in-law passed away. The doctor said it was his time, but my mother-in-law blamed his death on me. This happened because you neglected to care for father. At that time, I was so shocked by the loss of a person in front of me that I took my mother-in-law's words at face value. I believed it was my fault father-in-law died, and I had to atone for that sin. Since then, I've been complying with everything Hillary and Scott said. But recently, I occasionally think to myself, is this really okay for my life? I married Scott to be happy. But I'm far from happy now. Doubting my own position, yet too busy to improve anything, I just continue my days unable to do anything. One day, on my way home from work, I passed by a small privately owned clothing store and was captivated by a pair of shoes I saw. I had been interested in this store before, but since I had limited money to spend freely, I usually just looked without buying anything. But seeing those shoes displayed in the showcase, I couldn't take my eyes off them. I bought them. Before I knew it, I had purchased the shoes. The money came from my savings, and I had to keep it a secret from Scott and Hillary. Those two would even frown at me buying socks. The shoes I bought this time were quite expensive. I didn't know what they would say if they found out, so I hid the shoes in the back of my bag and quickly stashed them in the back of my wardrobe when I got home. I'll have to wear these shoes for a special occasion. Yeah, maybe I should call up a friend from my student days for the first time in a while. Buying new shoes lifted my spirits in a way I had long forgotten. I had been so tied down by this household that I couldn't even freely buy socks. A mix of panic for doing something bold and excitement for being able to wear the new shoes made my heart flutter. I'll need to get their permission to go out. That seemed most challenging, but somehow it would work out. Afterward, I spent a few days in a brightened mood. But one day, exhausted from work, I returned home. What caught my eye as I opened the front door was Hillary trying to force her feet into my newly bought shoes. "What are you doing?" Taken aback by my loud voice, Hillary showed a surprised expression. But soon, her usual malicious smile returned. "What do you think I'm doing?" "I'm just trying on these new shoes." "When did you get to such a high position to buy such beautiful shoes?" "These shoes suit me better than your poor feet. So, I'll take these shoes for myself." Staring at me with a grin, Hillary's spiteful smile quickly turned into a frown. "What's with these shoes? They don't fit at all." Though it's odd to say, Hillary has a rather glamorous figure. Naturally, her feet are as thick as her body, so it's obvious my shoes wouldn't fit her. However, Hillary blamed the shoes for not fitting and eventually burst into a rage. "I don't need these." With that shout, she violently threw the shoes onto the floor. The impact dirted the shoes and dislodged a decoration. "Just throw that trash away." While hearing Hillary's hysterical screams, I gently picked up the shoes. "I think I can wear them if they're fixed. The dirt will probably come off." I held the damaged shoes close, desperately trying to hold back tears. I put the shoes back deep in the wardrobe and waited for Scott to come home. This incident was too awful. Thinking of discussing Hillary's behavior with Scott, I waited for his late return. I'm tired." Without even a greeting, Scott returned home with a dramatic sigh. I approached him, my hands trembling. "Scott, listen. Your mother tried on my shoes without asking." "Huh? So what? You're both women, it shouldn't matter, right?" "It's not about that." Scott's grumpy voice interrupted me as I tried to continue. "Wait, you bought shoes? With my money, without consulting me?" Caught off guard by his response, I stuttered for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, Scott started berating me. "You, who hardly earn any money, used my money to buy shoes." "It's the money I earned. Normally, you'd consult about something like this, right? What were you thinking? And you complain about Mom wearing them without asking? Who do you think you are?" Scott said this, but we couldn't live on his earnings alone. It's only with my earnings that Hillary and Scott can eat. When we got married, I clearly told Scott how much we would need for living expenses. With Hillary added to our expenses, he should know we can't get by on his earnings alone. However, it seems Scott has completely forgotten this over the years. "I bought these with money from my savings." "What? Your savings must be meager. You hardly earn much." Frustrated by Scott's ignorance, I snapped back before I realized it. "You're one to talk, not earning much yourself." I intended to say it under my breath, but it seems Scott heard me clearly. "Say that again." With that shout, Scott threw his bag at me. Fortunately, the bag missed me and hit the wall instead. But his violent behavior shocked and scared me. "Don't ever talk back like that again." After yelling that, he violently slammed the door and left the room. How terrible. What a thing to do. Until now, I had never talked back to Scott and had shown a submissive attitude. This was his response to my rebellious behavior. What should I do now? I wiped the tears that had spilled without realizing it with the sleeve of my dress. The tears kept flowing, and I couldn't stop them for a while. After this shocking incident, I fell ill. I managed to go to work, but my colleagues, noticing my pale complexion, encouraged me to leave early. I feel so tired. Dragging my heavy feet, I was about to open the front door when suddenly, the front door opened on its own, startling me into raising my voice. The person who opened the door was an unfamiliar woman. Huh? Who? Thinking she might be a burglar, I stiffened. However, the woman looked me up and down, snorted dismissively, and showed a triumphant expression. Then, without saying anything, she walked away. Why are you here? As I stood there dumbfounded, Scott came out from inside the house with a surprised look. Scott works night shifts primarily, so it's not strange for him to be at home during the day, but I glared at him coldly. Scott, who was that? I don't know how to say this. Suddenly stumbling over his words, I felt a suspicion and contorted my face in anger. Is she your affair partner? I asked directly, causing Scott's eyes to dart around. From behind him, Hillary peeked out and opened her mouth to speak in place of the hesitant Scott. That was Scotty's new partner for remarriage. What? I couldn't help but let out a silly voice. What did my mother-in-law just say? Looking at me with wide eyes of surprise, my mother-in-law frowned unpleasantly. You still haven't given birth to any children. That's why Scotty found someone else to remarry. She's younger and seems more capable. Could you please divorce quickly? I looked at Scott incredulously, and it seemed he had become defiant with the help of his mother. Changing from his earlier flustered demeanor, he unexpectedly puffed out his chest and declared. I met her at a group dating event. She said she likes me. When I told her I was married, she said she'd wait until I'm divorced. She's a really earnest girl. Seeing my stunned face, Scott got even more carried away and confidently uttered something outrageous. I'm divorcing a defective product that can't bear children. I'm taking the house and the car too. Scotty is right. You're no longer part of our family. Go back to your parents' house or whatever, do as you like. Scott and Hillary burst into mean-spirited laughter. Until now, they had treated me like a servant. They had been manipulating me for years for their own convenience, but I never imagined they would find someone else for Scott to remarry and suddenly demand a divorce. They probably think I will obediently listen to them as I have before. Yet, how could they be so selfish? I am utterly disgusted with my lack of judgment. If I had known they were like this, I would never have married. I made a wrong choice in a crucial decision of my life, but from now on, I will not make a mistake. With that resolution in my heart, I faced Scott and Hillary squarely and slowly began to speak. I understand. Just wait a moment. My response caught them off guard. Leaving them behind, I quickly headed to the city hall. It was good that I got off work in the morning. I thought to myself with an unusually calm mind. You just said you wanted to divorce me, right? Okay. Here, the divorce papers. After filling out the necessary details at the city hall, I handed them to Scott, who was casually sitting in the living room with a smile. Are you serious? What do you mean? Of course, I'm serious. Weren't you the one who wanted the divorce? Leaving a confused Scott behind, I quickly packed my belongings. As I had few personal items, I finished packing quickly. Of course, I also remembered to retrieve those shoes I had hidden in the back of the wardrobe. Come on, write down the necessary details quickly. I'm going to submit these to the lawyer's office now. I urged Scott to fill out the divorce papers. After checking the divorce papers thoroughly, I faced still dumbfounded Scott and Hillary, smiling broadly as I loudly declared. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for everything. Both of them could only send me off with silly faces until the end. After that, I stayed at a hotel near my workplace. Reflecting on it, this was the first time since getting married that I had spent time alone, and I relished the newfound freedom. Enjoying my free time, I went to work as usual the next day. Despite being at work, Scott called me several times. I was busy and had no time to deal with my now ex-husband. By evening, I had ignored all of Scott's calls until I returned to the hotel, but I finally answered the phone with a sigh, realizing I couldn't properly use my phone if this continued. You finally picked up. Why is my car missing? I had a date planned for a drive with my remarriage partner today. You took it, didn't you? Upon answering, Scott somehow sounded almost in tears. Your fault, my new partner is disillusioned with me. She was really looking forward to driving in that car. What are you going to do about this? Apparently, his remarriage partner was disillusioned, and he was quite upset about it. Overwhelmed by such selfish reasoning, I looked up at the ceiling in astonishment. It seems that Scott still doesn't understand anything. So, I decided to confront him with the reality. What are you talking about since earlier? That car is mine. What? What are you talking about? That car is mine. You just took it, you thief. Despite Scott scolding me, I stopped him with a significant reason. Listen. The car is registered in my name. I paid for the car. I've been paying the car tax every time. I also took care of its inspection. You were just borrowing my car. Do you understand? Until now, I had never talked back to Scott like this. As a result, he was surprised by my transformation. However, he still tried to retort, fumbling with his words. You couldn't possibly have paid that much money. Then, did you pay for all those expenses? Do you remember making those payments? Didn't you just pay with my money without asking? At these words, I was dismayed at how I could have married such a hopeless fool. This man believed that I handled all the troublesome paperwork and that I was paying from his wallet. It's unbelievable that this is a grown adult. Then, take a look at your bank account. Are the car inspection fees and car tax paid from your account? That can't be right, because I paid for everything. So, you can't possibly have paid that much money. Don't you know about my assets? I have a total of $19 million. Huh? Scott let out a foolish voice, and I patiently explained. My father inherited some land from my grandfather and succeeded in managing it. He's been doing various things like apartment management and stock investments. And he had transferred some of those assets to me. It seems I inherited my father's talent for asset management, and I increased my assets with the land and stocks I received. The side job I mentioned is about asset management. By the way, I received these assets from my father before I got married. And my father, who opposed my marriage to Scott, repeatedly told me, never tell that guy about your assets. I rebelled against my father by marrying Scott, but I did take his advice seriously. Perhaps some instinct was at work. If I had revealed my assets to Scott, he and his mother might have taken everything. Because I heeded my father's warning, I was able to divorce quickly. I cannot thank my father enough. By the way, I reconciled with my father sometime after getting married. My mother has always been worried about me. Learning about the divorce might disappoint them, but I couldn't endure it any longer, and I believe they would understand if we talked properly. $19 million. No way, you can't have that kind of money. I know, it's unbelievable. Well, you don't need to believe it. To a trembling Scott, I continued to disclose a certain fact. Oh, and the house you and your mother are living in is mine, so please move out soon. I plan to sell the house. Huh? This is my house. What are you talking about? Have you gone mad? I almost said that the crazy one was him, but I swallowed those words. Arguing with Scott here would be a waste of time. So, I methodically refuted each of his statements. What are you talking about? I bought that house, and I am paying the mortgage. You never once participated in discussions with the house builder, did you? Nor did you attend meetings with the real estate agent or the bank where I borrowed the mortgage. I handled all the paperwork alone, and I am paying everything from my account. Indeed, Scott had left everything to me when we built the house, using his busy work as an excuse. Thanks to him, I could design the house to my liking, but that house holds too many unpleasant memories. So, I decided to sell the house now that we are divorced. Scott was flustered by my words but still refused to acknowledge them. No, that's wrong. This house is mine. Really? Is the mortgage being paid from your account each month? Please check your bank book right now. If the mortgage was being paid from your account, your savings would have been depleted long ago. I had explained everything to Scott when we bought the house. The house and the land are in my name, and I am paying the full mortgage. Scott said he understood, but it seems it was just lip service. Has he lived in the house so long that he's convinced himself it's his? It's hard to believe an adult could think this way, but he was convinced that my car was his too. I'm probably right in my thinking. But even if it is yours, I'm living here now. You can't just kick out a family and sell their home, that's not allowed. Can you not make me more disgusted? I filed for divorce yesterday. You and I are strangers now. Isn't it odd for a stranger to continue living in a house under my name? Huh? You really filed for divorce? You invited a stranger into my house, saying she's your remarriage partner, and you were the one who wanted a divorce. Why are you reacting like this? Have you forgotten what you did? That was just yesterday. I methodically crushed each of Scott's selfish arguments. Let me be clear since we're at this point. I really don't care about you anymore. To me, you're just a nuisance who squats in my house and makes selfish calls. You act all high and mighty, mistreating me and cheating, despite your meager earnings. Who do you think you are? I've always just gone along with what you said, and that was my mistake. But what you did to me is unforgivable. I will never forgive you for trying to hurt me. After I showered him with these definitive words of rejection, it seemed Scott finally understood his situation. Soon, I could hear his pathetic sobbing from the other side of the phone. Just as I was about to hang up, convinced that he understood, Scott blurted out something shocking. She's pregnant. Huh? Pregnant? Who is? My remarriage partner is pregnant. If you kick us out now, it's not just me and my mom who will suffer, but also my remarriage partner and the baby. Please, don't kick us out of the house. This was unexpectedly too much, and I was momentarily speechless. But quickly regaining my composure, I asked Scott, bewildered. Do you even hear yourself? You're asking your divorced wife to take care of your mistress and her baby? Don't you think that's incredibly selfish? But, surely you can't just abandon a pregnant woman, right? Scott's voice had become slightly more hopeful, thinking perhaps he could use the pregnancy to escape his predicament. However, he was misunderstanding a couple of things. Look, whether your mistress is pregnant or not, I really don't care. Besides, even if you are kicked out of that house, you can just find another place to live. That's too much. Isn't that just too cruel? Have you forgotten what you did to me? How can you say such arrogant things? You should look up the word shameless in the dictionary. And, are you sure that child in her stomach is yours? Scott fell silent for a moment at my words. Then, understanding the implication, he shouted in anger. Of course, it is. How can you say such terrible things? After all, we divorced because you couldn't get pregnant for years, right? Just because you can't get pregnant, saying such awful things. No. I actually don't have any fertility issues. What? I dropped the ultimate bombshell I had saved for the end. After we got married, I had a thorough checkup at the gynecologist. The diagnosis was that my ovulation is normal, and I could have gotten pregnant any time. The doctor said it's highly likely that the problem was with you. So, I'll ask again, is that child really yours? While it's not good to judge by appearances, the woman Scott brought into our home on his own had a quite flashy appearance. Her look was one that I could believe if someone said she was promiscuous. After my second query, Scott fell silent for a while. Maybe he had already begun to suspect. The woman who said she liked him had other partners besides him. As evidence of this, Scott suddenly became almost hysterical afterward, desperately denying the reality before him. It's a lie, that can't be true. It's not my fault that we couldn't conceive. She said she loves me. That child in her belly is definitely mine. Then, why don't you go get tested at a hospital? And after the baby is born, you can do a DNA test. That way, you'll know the truth. No, I absolutely don't want to do that. Growing tired of Scott's frantic screaming. Oh really? Then do as you like. Either way, the car is mine and I won't give it back, and the house is mine too, so you need to leave. Wait. Please help me, Kate. You're asking the wrong person for help. Isn't there your affair partner who claims to love you? Plus, your mother who's just like you, selfish, spoiled, and the worst character. One last thing, whatever happens to you from now on, I'm not interested at all. Whether you're kicked out of the house and run out of money and struggle to live, I truly don't care. Don't ever call me again. I realized today that your voice is really annoying and unpleasant. Taking the opportunity while Scott was lost for words, I ended the call. I immediately blocked Scott's number. After that, I never received any more calls from Scott, but next, his mother called. She was rambling, but to sum it up. As I suspected, the child in the affair partner's belly wasn't Scott's. The affair partner had targeted Scott because he appeared to have a stable life with a house and my car. That stable life was due to my efforts, but the affair partner wouldn't have known that. When Scott confronted her about the affair, she brazenly dumped him and disappeared. Please, come back. We were wrong. I truly regret everything. Hearing my mother-in-law's deliberately weak voice over the phone, I burst out laughing. Regret? You, who have only ever treated me terribly, regret? I don't think so. Please, take a break from joking. By the way, do you even understand the meaning of regret? Maybe you should look it up in a dictionary. What did you say? How dare you speak like that, a daughter-in-law speaking out of turn. See, you're not really regretting anything. I sighed in exasperation at my mother-in-law showing her true colors again. Also, please finally leave that house. It looks like I might have a buyer soon. Wait, please. Don't kick us out of the house. No. If you keep fussing, I'll hire a lawyer. If you don't like that, you'd better leave quickly. After dropping those final words, I ended the call and promptly blocked my mother-in-law's number. I might even consider changing my phone for good measure. There's a new model I'm interested in, it might be a good opportunity. As I stepped outside, I thought about going to eat something delicious, and a smile naturally came to my face. Afterward, the house was successfully sold. It seems that Scott and his mother gave up and left the house later. From what I heard, the two are now living in a crumbling apartment that could collapse at any moment. Scott's salary is probably the limit for them. They are struggling even to eat daily and have asked relatives for help, but no one wants to assist them. The relatives are gossiping that it's a self-inflicted situation caused by a son and mother who drove away their daughter-in-law. I heard rumors they were picking grass or fetching water from a park, but whether that's true, I can't be certain. Since Hillary's call, I haven't spoken or seen them, so I don't know exactly how they're living. Honestly, whatever their situation, I have no interest at all and couldn't care less. Anyway, unless Scott gets a better job, they're headed for a ruined life. Meanwhile, I'm enjoying my single life. After the divorce, I reported it to my parents by phone, but once the house was sold, I returned home to apologize and report in person. My parents weren't particularly surprised, they had suspected a divorce would happen eventually. I have sufficient assets, and they told me they don't mind if I stay single, which was comforting. However, lately, a man I met through work seems to be trying to get closer to me. There's no obvious approach, but I'm not so oblivious as to not notice his interest. Considering everything with Scott, I'd rather avoid relationships with men for a while. He knows I'm divorced and seems to have good intentions. I thought I'd had enough of marriage for a while, but if he truly cares for me, I might have to seriously consider what comes next. I'd like to get married again if possible, and maybe have children and build a happy family. I wish I had divorced Scott sooner, but the past can't be changed. All I can do now is make sure I don't make wrong choices again for my happiness. I used to think making sacrifices for my spouse and his family was what happiness was about. But I was wrong. It took a long time to realize, but if I think of it as gaining life experience, then it wasn't a waste of time. From now on, I'll live putting myself first. I believe that's the key to my happiness.